Hello and welcome to round 2 with Green Black Tron. That's clearly not a keeper. That's just doing nothing. This is just a snap keep. It's just turn 3 Tron, and I don't know what else you could possibly want with your life. I shipped that because I wanted an actual threat and not just an answer. Our opponent is playing Grixis Control. And it's technically right to have waited on the map in case I get like uh, spreading seas. I'm sorry, off of the first iteration here, I didn't know they were playing Grixis Control. They could be playing a Blood Moon deck or some weird spreading seas deck. And it's technically right to have waited on the map and not activated main phase, because then if they like spreading seas one of my lands, I can fetch the redundant copy and still have 4 of the other one in my deck. But I got good F6 value by doing that, so welcome to Magic Online. Uh, Here, I'm just going to try to map up a green source so I can start world breaking my opponent. But I don't have to do that immediately. And here, now that I know that my opponent's not like a Blood Moon deck, now that I know they're Grixis, I want to aggressively activate Relic so I can attack my opponent's ability to extend an early cheap Tasigur. And here we're just going to start world breaking my opponent. We're all troned up, and this is a pretty clear world breaker target. Go after the red source. Opponent terminates it, that's fine. We have exactly enough, you have 10 mana, so you can play your extra Tron piece, sack the extra Tron piece to get back World Breaker from your graveyard and just cast it again. I'm just going to churn through that over and over rather than, it's not that my opponent's eventually going to run out of lands, it's just they're eventually going to run out of answers. And at that point, I can start doing other stuff like Ancient Stirrings. Me figuring out the tap dance here. And the same exact thing happens as last turn. Opponent draws some cards, gets into a position where they're trying to do some stuff. Puts another Visions in the exiled zone. Not like actually doing anything I'm afraid of. That's the first thing they've done that's relevant. But I drew Ulamog, so the game is basically just over. And they don't even let me choose targets. If they did, it would have been Tasigur and the red land again. It's worth noting that with the previous turn, when I was rebuying the World Breaker, the line that I was considering wasn't actually Ancient Stirrings up another threat. It was scrying to get Sanctum of Ugin, which would then get the Ulamog. That's the slow roll that I would be interested in. But specifically, that slow roll is soft to Spell Snare, so I was not a huge fan of it. Okay, sideboarding. So I did a pretty quick swap. Cut down on Brutality. You don't want a ton of them. It's just an expensive duress, and you're going to beat duress by shoving your stuff through their stuff anyways, especially when World Breaker and Ulamog don't care about a counterspell. I added a Thragtusk just as another threat. One thing I thought I sideboarded the extra forest in for the Ghost Quarter, but my notes don't have it. Uh, the Ghost Quarter handles Creeping Tar Pit, but just extra green sources to cast your green spells is nice. Okay, welcome to game 2 with Grixis Control against Tron. Or with Tron against Grixis Control, strike that, reverse it. This first hand does not do anything. It's got one Tron piece and does not get out of it very well and doesn't interact. I was not a huge fan of it, so I was just rather aggressively mulligan. The 6 is kind of the same one Tron piece thing, but it's actually got a card that matters, so I was okay with it. Scry to bottom is pretty obvious there. My opponent suspends a turn 1 vision. And I just get the relic out and start heating their graveyard. And luckily we hit the second Tron piece. I debated not casting the map due to exposing it to Kolaghan's command this way, but I was kind of okay with that happening. Just throwing spells out there. I'm going to wait to cast the map, to use the map until I see another Tron piece. I'm fine with this exchange because that means I'm not getting my Karn countered by it later. And at this point, just so I can make 2 plays in the same turn, I'm finding a Tron piece. I upkeep, exile everything, so that my opponent has to tap. They had 4 cards in graveyard, and now they can probably cast a Tassiger off like a fetch land, but now they're in a worse position to leave up mana in case I hit Tron. And I get a lot of punish for this because I forget about what one of the important purposes of Relic post-board in this matchup is, which is to protect from surgical extraction. I'm supposed to be able to exile my own stuff, and when I did it on my when I activated both on my turn, I think that was okay. I was taking care of a reasonable Snapcaster target and Counter Squall, but maybe I should have been more conservative. And now I'm playing the no Tron game, which is not a very fun game for the Tron deck. Collective Brutality, seeing 2 cantrips and a bolt out of my opponent, and they don't have any action coming up, so that's okay. I just got to hit land drops. The Tron deck can still win without Tron. And here I'm fine throwing away the Relic. We're at the point where it was taking care of a Cryptic and a Fulminator Mage, which are 2 things that my opponent can Kolaghan or Snapcaster Mage out of the graveyard that are threatening, and I just need to hit land drops. And this is a sad interaction there. Getting my opponent getting to counter a land drop, not very good for me. And I think this is about the point where I felt the game went to being borderline unwinnable. We're just getting our black-green source. The Tron lands don't matter. That card is specifically what matters. Just access to all of our spells that find more land. And that's a reasonably good hit. And here, I've got so much going on, I'm fine just throwing away Collective Brutality for the most possible into a counterspell. I was discarding like an Ulamog that's never going to cast on this board state, and a second World Breaker, which I didn't think I needed with the first one going, and the Karn in hand. And suddenly, my chances of winning this game are pretty low. Now I'm just dead on board to Snapcaster, Creeping Tar Pit, Tassiger attack. And even if I hit, I was hoping for there to be no interaction. And then I still think I have to draw another land because trading 6 and gaining 6 doesn't actually get me anywhere. So back to the sideboard here. I swapped out an Oblivion Stone for another Thragtusk, just higher threat density. Stone takes care of some stuff but isn't super important, so it's not a huge loss in the slightest. Okay, welcome to Game 3 against Grixis. We are on the play. This is a fine 7. You need to draw a few specific things, but you've got 4, 5, 13 green sources. You got 17 cards that get you immediately out of this that make green or get you to Tron. I guess more because of map. 21, I didn't count that. So you've got 4 Tron pieces, 8 stars, 5 green sources, a expedition map. There's just a lot of outs, so I think you kind of have to keep this hand even though it doesn't cast the spells in any way. And not a ton going on here. And we kind of just get got. And I don't. This kind of sucks. I don't know what you're supposed to do about that. I think that this is, if there's any takeaway from this match, I think that the shift to that specific combination, Fulminator Extraction, over like Crumble to Dust or Sowing Salt, is really huge for the fair decks because it lets them get underneath you a little more often. Even though it's not necessarily the easiest to assemble, it's just two more flexible cards that they get to play that assemble into something that sometimes breaks the Tron deck in unique ways. And we're actually like reasonably close to getting out of this if we can just cast this Thragtusk. But unfortunately, the second Fulminator happens, which is horrible. I did notice something that against this plan, the Blooming Marsh is a little worse than Grove because you're ending up in spots where, like, if you can't Tron up, you're trying to cast your spells the hard way, and you know, draw your sixth land, and it enters the battlefield tapped. I think, you know, we're getting just the second green black source. We're not using the mana that turn, and it's the best land in the deck once you're off Tron. I think I could have given my opponent those counter squall off that caster activation and just played creatures all the way up, but the Serum Vision it's definitely a little worse. And I try to cast the Ragtusk, and there's a counterspell, and the game ends. Um, a little unlucky. I don't know about the keeps. I think it's possible that once my opponent was clearly like aggro Fulminator mage sideboarding, like I think I should have boarded up to 20 lands, and I didn't. So that was something I should have done. Should have cut another Oblivion Stone for the forest. Um, didn't sideboard perfectly, but just didn't have hands that panned out on the right side of things as well. And that can happen sometimes. And I think the Fulminator Surgical Plan is definitely more likely to make it happen than any other plan I've seen for this matchup.